Paul McCartney wrote this rocker during the Beatles' meditation retreat in India in early 1968, but it started with a joke from a Beach Boys member at the breakfast table. Mike Love, who was also staying at the Maharishi's ashram in Rishikesh, remembered sitting alone when Paul came down with his acoustic guitar, strumming and singing the verses to Back in the U.S.S.R. Love suggested Paul should talk about the girls all around Russia, the Ukraine and Georgia, essentially putting a Russian spin on the Beach Boys' California girls. This casual conversation would transform Chuck Berry's Patriotic, Back in the U.S.A., into one of the most controversial Beatles songs ever recorded. The song was actually Paul's parody of Chuck Berry's 1959 hit, Back in the U.S.A., which Berry had written after touring Australia and witnessing the harsh treatment of Aboriginal people. Berry's original was a sincere love letter to America, celebrating everything from drive-ins to hamburgers sizzling on grills. McCartney flipped this concept completely, creating what he called a traveling Ruskie who has just flown in from Miami Beach. He's come the other way. Paul explained it was about a Soviet spy who had been in America so long he'd become very American, but was now returning home to Russian women and Georgian mountains. The irony was intentional. While Berry genuinely missed American conveniences, Paul's character was celebrating a country most Westerners viewed as oppressive. Recording the song became a disaster that nearly broke up the Beatles. On August 22, 1968, during rehearsals at Abbey Road, Ringo Starr walked out of the band after Paul kept criticizing his drumming and even sat behind the kit to show him how it should sound. Ringo later said he felt like an outsider and that the other three were really happy without him. The remaining Beatles recorded the basic track with Paul on drums, George on electric guitar, and John on six-string bass. But the drumming was so complex that they ended up creating what Ken Scott called a composite drum track of bits and pieces, with all three Beatles contributing drum parts that were later stitched together. The result was ironically one of their tightest rock performances ever. The song sparked immediate controversy when released in November 1968, just months after the Soviet invasion of Czechoslovakia. Both American leftists and conservatives attacked the Beatles for appearing to sympathize with the U.S.S.R, completely missing Paul's tongue-in-cheek humor. What made the reaction even more absurd was that the song was essentially a Beach Boys pastiche. The Ukraine Girls Really Knock Me Out bridge was directly inspired by California Girls, and the harmonies were pure Brian Wilson. The controversy was so lasting that the BBC actually banned the song in 1990 during the Gulf War, over 20 years after its release. Paul later admitted he sometimes wondered if modern audiences even understood what the U.S.S.R. was, calling the references amazingly ancient.